So let's start with the ketogenic diet. What is it? It is a high fat and a very low carbohydrate diet, which means that you can have a lot of the high fat or fat rich foods like cheese, eggs, avocado, which is quote unquote a healthy fat. You have butter. You can have unlimited. Some advocate unlimited amounts of it. There is a strict restriction on carbohydrate-rich foods. Carbohydrate-rich foods are basically some things like rice, bread, chapati, fiber-rich foods like apple and like confectionery, sugar, etc. The ketogenic diet usually advocates for less than 50 grams of carbohydrates per day, but some people even aim for less than 20 grams. It should be noted that our recommended daily carbohydrate intake is for women especially is an average of around 250 grams per day. So it's an extremely low carbohydrate diet. However, the fun fact about this is that the ketogenic diet was originally made and devised in the early 1920s as a treatment for childhood epilepsy, which means, and it is still used today in for children who are medication resistant, who have medication resistant epilepsy, and it's still the only clinical use. There is not much data on any other clinical use, let alone weight loss. So just a quick idea of what usually happens when we're on a balanced diet. We have a balanced amount of carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. They break down and they carry out various metabolic activities. We're happy, we're as happy as Popeye, and it's a good life. But when we're on a ketogenic diet, we're not having carbohydrates anymore. So what ends up happening is that the fats and proteins, of course, break down to form metabolic activities. But there is also this SOS mechanism, this SOS pathway that has been switched on called gluconeogenesis. And what this SOS pathway does is that it converts or it breaks down proteins and fats to provide glucose in the brain. Why does the brain need glucose? Because it is the only fuel that can, glucose, which is the breakdown product of carbohydrates, is the only particle, not protein or fat, that can cross the blood-brain barrier and provide energy for the brain. So the brain requires glucose, it lives on glucose, and the way it's going to get glucose if you're on a keto diet is that it's going to break down the proteins. Now, there comes a point when you're on a keto diet when your muscles start breaking down because it takes the proteins from your muscles as well. And this goes on to carry out various metabolic processes in the body. A byproduct of this SOS mechanism called gluconeogenesis is it is ketone bodies, hence you get the name ketogenic diet. The SOS mechanism is not an efficient way of functioning of our body. It takes up a lot of energy to give very little glucose relatively, and why does it even exist in the first place in our bodies is because it saves us from starvation. So when the body feels like it's being starved, that's when it switches on this SOS mechanism to start converting proteins and fats into glucose to carry out metabolic activities. So suffice it to say that when you're on a ketogenic diet, your body is perceiving your body to be starving, and that's why this is what kind of goes on. The facts are that there was this one study on about around 15,000 people that was published in the Lancet recently, which showed that a diet low in carbohydrate intake of less than 40% of your daily calories increases the risk of mortality or death, and keto, by the way, has only 5 to 10% of calories coming from carbohydrates to see the difference. And keto is also extremely high in saturated fats and low in fruits. So obviously, there is less fiber that leads to constipation, poor gut health. There is obviously a higher risk of heart disease, fatty liver disease, and even early death. There has been proved a link with high amount of protein consumption and kidney damage. The high levels of circulating ketones, which are the byproducts of this entire SOS mechanism that we spoke about, is weak bones or brittle bones, osteoporosis, physical stress, kidney damage. There's also a paper that was published that showed that Asians had the least compliance to keto. And this is because us as Asians, our base for our food culturally is carbohydrate-rich foods, which is the roti and the rice, and for Southeast Asians, it's heavily rice and noodles. So we're not able to comply with the keto diet for long. It's not a bad thing at all. It means that the diet has failed on a cultural level, and for a diet to be a good diet, it also has to be culturally and socially compatible. There are no long-term studies, no studies that have shown that beyond 2 years of the benefit of this diet. So there's really not enough evidence or strong enough evidence to support the ketogenic diet. Of course, it leads to low mood because you have carbohydrates which provide energy to the brain. And if you don't have adequate energy in the brain, low mood, anxiety, and the rest just follows. It may also lead to disordered eating. You're going to find me throwing around this term in almost every slide when I talk about the different types of fat diets. So this is basically what a ketogenic diet is from a scientific point of view. All of these points have been proven, have been shown to have scientific links in a nutshell. Fruits and vegetables, they have a lot of micronutrients as well as phytochemicals that are good and will help your liver enzymes. Yeah, I think that's atta or whole wheat or rice is a source of carbohydrate. And I know there is this narrative about low carbohydrates in a PCOS diet, but you need to at least eat enough carbohydrates, right? And it's absolutely fine if you're having atta or rice. It has to be mindfully eaten and in cues with your hunger satiety cues. Make sure that you're having your medication and supplementations on time, and you should be fine. From what I just spoke about, I don't think it's a good idea to start keto, because if you can see the slide right now, you're showing that it's showing that low carbohydrates is associated with death, the risk of death. You have heart health being jeopardized, constipation, fatty liver disease coming in, kidney damage there's a high risk of that, bone health, and of course disordered eating. So I really don't think it's a good idea to start keto.